Last week, we talked about payment systems and last week we talked about payment systems, and today morning I got a SMS alert like this: 140,000 US dollars and 30 million Sri Lankan rupees found by police from a house in Dematagoda, believed to be earned by drug trafficking and to be transferred via Mundial system. Okay, so last week we talked about payment systems. Now I got a SMS alert today morning talking about Mundial system. Okay, and in this message it says the money should have been suspected to be earned through drug trafficking. Okay, so there are a few things which we can relate to our topic discussed last week. These payment systems ensure that the transactions taking place and payment mechanism is smoothly in operation. However, the payment system always try to avoid money laundering. What do you mean by money laundering? Can someone send the answer in chat? What do you mean by money laundering? Yeah. Last week we talked about payment system, and today morning I got SMS alert saying a specific amount, 140,000 US dollars found in a house in Dematagoda, and that is suspected to be earned through drug drug dealers, and the money is expected to be transferred via Mundial system. Yeah. So I asked, what do you mean by money laundering? I got the answer: transfer of illegal source money. Okay. So one simple way of saying it, making black money white, that is money laundering. So you try to wash your dirty money and make it cleaner. And payment system try to avoid any kind of attempt on money laundering. Therefore, when you start up any account, you are asked to fill KYC form. What do you mean by KYC? KYC. Know your customer. Very good. We believe by knowing your customer, how he earn money, what are the sources of income, has he got some kind of relatives in these places, we want to know about him, his sources of income. So these things we want to check. For that, we are looking into money laundering. So all these were related to what we discussed last week, payment system. And I asked you to get updated by reading day-to-day news, especially news related to finance and economics. For an example, if you read Daily FT, Financial Times, you get updated on these areas. Our subject is often updating. This is not a dead subject. Therefore, you must keep an eye on what is happening, what are the new acts, what are the new bills put forward for the parliament, what are the discussions taking place on economics. These things we must get updated. Today, we are going to discuss another main area. The subject area is leasing. We talked about many financial products that include venture capital, insurance, primary dealers, unit trusts, pawning, payment systems. And today we are going to discuss about leasing. Say me yes or no. Is leasing a popular financial product in Sri Lanka? Tell me yes or no. Yes, yes. So leasing is a very popular financial product in Sri Lanka. What are the things you get by leasing? The banks and finance companies, one of their favorite popular product is leasing. What are the products you get leased out vehicles. Very good. So the number of vehicles in Sri Lanka has gone up substantially. And also, also remember, the price of vehicles in Sri Lanka is very high. When you find one of your good friend moves out to Australia, very soon he'll show a photo of the vehicle he has purchased. And if you ask the price, the same vehicle in Sri Lanka is extremely expensive, whereas in Australia you can buy it at a lower cost. Anyway, in Sri Lanka, vehicles are much in demand thanks to leasing. And leasing companies are very interested in leasing out vehicles than machinery and equipment. For an example, if you are a manufacturer, you may need a lot of machines. There are machines like pulverizing machines, then color separation machine, printing machines. There are a lot of machines, but these finance companies and banks are very reluctant to give leasing facility to equipments and machinery, but they're extremely happy to give leasing for vehicles. Can anyone tell me reasons behind that? You said leasing is a very popular product. Yes, but leasing vehicles is the most popular, but leasing out equipments, machinery is not easy. Why? Why? Vehicles are not the only product that can be leased out. Okay, demand for the usage of machinery is uncertain. Okay, what else? What else? Demand for the usage of machinery is uncertain. Okay. Okay, what else? I'm asking you why machinery leasing is not popular, but vehicle leasing is popular. Why? So one reason, as you mentioned, the second-hand market for the machinery is very low. Suppose I'm a printer and I lease out a machine. If I don't pay back, you will take it, possess it, seize it, and try to sell it back. But the market will not demand because only very few people are interested in that machine. If you think you are in tea factory, you may purchase a color separator machine. And if you don't pay, I have to. Being the leaser, the person who lease out, I may go and take it, try to sell it out. But the majority of the population do not want to purchase a color separator machine. Same applies to many machines. Okay. So the second-hand market is very low. That is one reason. That's what we have said. What are the other reasons for less demand for machines? Yeah. Think and tell me. Maintenance, okay. Right. What else? Now, last month, there was a infamous incident, and the net result was media talked about leasing mafia after a death of a person. That made government to take some actions. For an example, they said you cannot seize vehicles. You cannot seize vehicles. And vehicles can be easily seized. Why? Because they are always moving out, because they are always on the road, on public places. But machines are installed within a premise owned by someone else. So I cannot forcibly enter, but you can easily seize a vehicle which is moving on the road. Means what? Repossession process is very difficult for machines. Next, the vehicle. Most of the time, vehicle demand is always going up thanks to the demand in Sri Lankan vehicles plus the government tax policies. Vehicle price is always going up, but that is not with the machines. Machine price may come down because less demand. And when a new model, new advanced featured machine come, existing machine price goes down. Therefore, the second-hand demand is very low for machine. You cannot easily repossess them. Market price always, or market price most of the time, goes down in machines. Right. Now the net result is very clear. Everyone is interested in leasing out vehicles, and we have seen how many car sales in and around all your cities. Earlier, there were very few car sales places, but by now, in every town, in every village, you will find a car sale. Means what? This is the byproduct of leasing get popular for vehicle leasing. But you don't see factories moving up, factories mushrooming up in Sri Lanka because people find it's very difficult to purchase a machine. Okay, now we'll look at the slides. First, we will go through some definitions. Leasing can be divided into two parts, finance leasing and operating leasing. So remember, there are two types of leasing. When you say leasing, most of the time you are referring to finance leasing. So first we look at finance leasing. Finance leasing means the business of investing money for the provision of equipment under a finance lease. Here the equipment means even the vehicle. And you are purchasing a vehicle under the term of finance lease. Right. So there are two types of leasing. One is operating lease, the other is finance leasing. And now we are looking at finance lease. Now we are looking at certain definitions. Lessor and the lessee. Lessor, in relation to a finance lease, means the person who transfers the right to possession and use of equipment under a lease to a lessee. Okay, so there are three parties. For the moment, let's assume there are two parties. One is owner, the real owner of vehicle. The other is the user of the vehicle. Now, a leasing agreement will combine the two. Owner is not using. User is using and make a payment for the owner, a monthly payment, which we call lease rental. Lessor is the bank. Lessor is the finance company who own the item, own the equipment, own the vehicle, and hand over to lessee to use it. Lessee, in relation to finance lease, means a person who acquires a right of possession and use of an equipment under the lease. So lessee is the user. Lessee is the person who is using the vehicle. Lessor is the person who owns it. Therefore, he is the absolute owner. When a vehicle gets registered in motor traffic RMB department, in its book, CR book, absolute ownership goes to lessor, that is the bank or the finance company. Registered owner becomes the user or the lessee. So clearly remember, lessor is the bank, lessee is the user. Lessee. Now, in this act, from time to time, you may hear or read the word board or monetary board. That refers to the monetary board of CBSL, established under Monetary Law Act. Right. What do you mean by operating lease and what do you mean by financial lease? First, we'll talk a little bit practically, then we'll look into these differences. Now, finance lease means the most popular leasing product in Sri Lanka. Everyone wants ownership of the vehicle, but He cannot afford it. Therefore, he goes to a bank or the finance company and asks them to lease out the vehicle for him. And after signing the lease agreement and after paying the due amounts, which is not the full amount, you get the vehicle from the car sale and you become the user of the vehicle. So you may drive yourself or you may assign a driver to drive it on behalf of you. You are the user, but the ownership belongs to bank. And suppose you agree to pay 48 rentals. That means after 4 years of assigning this vehicle to you, you expect to become the owner of the vehicle. You expect to become the owner of the vehicle after using it for 4 years. For the outsider, we don't see a difference. You have been using a vehicle and you are now using a vehicle. You have been using the vehicle for 4 years ago and now you are using the same vehicle. As an outsider, I won't see any difference. But you get a difference. Until now, you cannot sell your vehicle. Now you get the ownership. Since you are the owner, you can sell the vehicle to someone else at a price you wish. Finance lease, your intention is to become the owner of the vehicle. But by now we find there's a demand for operating lease. Now operating lease is different from finance leasing. Number one, after the usage period, ownership cannot be transferred. Now we see a lot of Sri Lankans who have migrated to Australia and many other countries prefer to come back to Sri Lanka and spend about 2 or 3 months in Sri Lanka. Within that period, they want a vehicle. So they go to a finance company or a bank which has operating leasing facility. They get a vehicle. And after 3 months, they leave Sri Lanka. They never ever want to own the vehicle. They only ask usage of the vehicle. Now that is the main first difference. Intention of owning or not owning. Finance leasing, you want to own it. Operating lease, ownership cannot be transferred. Ownership cannot be transferred. So you are using it without any intention of owning the vehicle. Right. Now you have migrated to Australia and in your vacation you came back to Sri Lanka. You want to travel throughout the country. So you got a vehicle on operating leasing terms. Suppose you have to service the vehicle. And for that day, you cannot run. If you are the finance leasing owner, you have to service your vehicle yourself. Operating leasing, you may ask the finance company to send another vehicle and do the repair or damage or service by the finance company. So you are not involving in any kind of maintenance of the vehicle. If the vehicle meets with an accident, you call the finance company and ask another vehicle and you hand over the insurance claiming and all the other related things to the finance company. Now these are the practical differences between finance leasing and operating lease. Now we look at the chart. Operating lease, ownership with the lessor. Now you know who is a lessor. Lessor is the bank. Ownership never ever gets transferred. Finance lease, transfer option at the end of the lease period is there with the lessee. Transfer option at the end of the lease period is there with the lessee. In finance leasing, there is an option to transfer. So it's not compulsory. Theoretically, absolute owner is the owner of the vehicle even after the lessee pays the last installment, last rental. You are the owner, bank is the owner. But there is an option to get the vehicle ownership transferred. In operating lease, there is no such option. Risk and rewards related to asset. Now risk and reward, the first risk and reward related to a vehicle is what? What is the reward of owning a vehicle. That is capital gain at the end of the period. So you purchase a vehicle at 1 million, and after 4 years, you will find the same vehicle can be sold to 2 million. So there is a profit of 1 million. That advantage is with the bank. So bank can get that profit, not the user. In finance lease, it's with the lessee. That's why people prefer to pay an interest and finally get the ownership. At least you can sell the vehicle and make a profit out of it. That is the expectation. Purchase option. Can I own the vehicle which I drove? In operating lease, no, you cannot. In finance lease, the lessee have a purchase option. Remember, it's not compulsory. Okay, so don't think it's compulsory to bank to hand over the vehicle after paying all the rentals. No, there's option. In finance lease, there's a purchasing option. Expenses borne by the lessor. Now I have to service the vehicle. The bank will do the service, not the user. But in finance leasing, the bank is not even looking at your vehicle. You have to do the service yourself, vehicle service. Running cost to lease, no running or administration cost. Running cost to lease, no running cost or administration cost. So I'm not going to garages, I'm not looking at insurance, I'm just paying. And I'm only doing running. But for finance leasing, running costs, what are they? Vehicle services, tire replacements, okay, wear and tear of certain items like timing belt. All this belongs to the user. But for operating lease, that is for the owner, the bank. The bank has to look after servicing, timing belt changing, all other running repairs. Tax benefit to lessee. No depreciation can be claimed. I am using and I am paying for using, but I don't have any option to own it. Therefore, I cannot depreciate what I am not owning. So the lessee is out of depreciation. But for finance lease, interest and depreciation both can be claimed from tax. Okay. The first question that you must prepare for your exam under leasing is, what are the differences between operating lease and finance lease? Now these are the headings: ownership, risks, purchasing option, expenses, running cost to tax benefit. Then you can see the differences. Okay. Now, practically, operating lease is different from finance lease. When I suppose I'm running a finance company and I have these two options, I can hand over a vehicle on finance leasing terms, and I can hand over you a vehicle on operating lease terms. Okay, now you know the differences between operating lease and finance leasing. My first question is, which one is popular in Sri Lanka? Operating lease or finance lease? Send me your answer. What is popular? Operating lease or finance lease? Yeah, lease is finance lease, yes. Finance lease. Right, so finance lease is popular and operating leasing is not popular. Remember, in order to marry, both parties should agree upon. One party preference will not end up in a marriage. Okay. In the same manner, pawning is popular because bank prefers pawning, customer prefers pawning. When both parties prefer, it becomes a popular product. Here, tell me, okay, you already told me finance leasing is the popular product, not the operating lease. Okay. If finance lease is popular, that means customer must like that product, bank or the finance company also like the product. Got it? Finance leasing is the popular. Why? Because customer and the bank both like finance leasing than operating lease. Okay. Tell me reasons why customers or the lessees prefer finance leasing. Why do customers prefer finance leasing? Tell me your answers. Why do customers prefer finance leasing? Tell me reasons why customers prefer finance leasing than operating leasing. Okay, you already said finance leasing is popular. That's correct. Now I'm asking, why do customers prefer finance leasing? Very good. Number one. Okay. Number two. Okay. Tell me other reasons. The main reason why customers prefer finance leasing is because there is an option to ownership. So as you correctly said, can get ownership of the vehicle. Now operating lease is not popular because you can never get ownership. I may use it, but I can never claim ownership for that. Finance leasing is popular because I can get ownership. Okay. What are the other reasons? Say tax. Tax benefit. If I get a finance leasing, I can claim for interest paid as well as the depreciation. Therefore, on tax benefit, I prefer finance lease. And operating lease, you cannot get that benefit. Okay. Now, tell me a reason why do banks like finance leasing? Why do banks like finance leasing? Why do banks like finance leasing than operating leasing? Okay. One reason is bank will find there is a high demand for operating lease vehicles, finance leasing vehicles. So that's one reason. Tell me other reasons why do banks prefer finance lease over operating lease than operating lease? Now in finance leasing, who has to maintain the vehicle? Yeah, in finance leasing, who has to look after the vehicle, running repairs, then servicing the vehicle? Who has to do that? The lessee, right? In operating lease, who has to do the services and running repairs? Lessor. Now, think practically. If you are the bank, do you like to always attend to services, repairs of a vehicle someone else is using? And you do not know the cost. Okay. So banks also prefer finance leasing because you need not involve in day-to-day running repairs. Okay. Customer has no running or administration cost, but the bank. For the lessee, for the customer, no running cost to administration cost. So that's very good for him, but not for us, the bank. So banks don't like operating lease. Okay. Now we have both these products, but finance leasing is the biggest in demand. Very few operating leasing, say about 12, less than 20 number of operating leases we are doing. We are doing that with few well-known establishments. Earlier, we tried operating lease with some customers, but soon found, after that research attempt, we found operating lease is not much in demand, and also it's very risky for the finance company. Now, I'm handing over you a vehicle for using it for 3 months. People use anything very differently when they own it and when they do not own it. When you own it, you very carefully look after your asset. When you don't own it, you are not looking after the asset. Any simple error, you will call the finance company, ask, send me a replacement vehicle. And services is due after every 5,000 kilometers, but you don't care. You take the entire 3 months without handing over the vehicle, asking for service, and you have run maybe 1,000, 2,000 kilometers over the service due date. These things always affect to the usage, further usage of the vehicle. Sometimes you may deliberately remove parts of the vehicle and put cheap parts. So all these things happen because the user is not interested in owning the vehicle. And the bank who is trying to maintain a vehicle on behalf of the customer will find it very difficult. This is why operating is not much popular. So for finance lease, sometimes we call it capital lease, treated as lessee's asset, treated as the bank's asset, recorded in the balance sheet, recorded in the income statement. Record depreciation and expenses because you are going to own it, no depreciation allowed. Transfer to ownership possible. Always remember that it's possible, it's not compulsory, it's option. No transferring. Bargain purchase option. Operating lease, other side. So you have to know the differences between finance leasing and operating lease. Now at the beginning, we are looking into terms which are very important for leasing. So we looked at lessor, lessee. Lessor is the bank, lessee is the customer. Then we looked at operating lease and finance lease. Now you don't know the differences. Now we are looking at some other important things coming under leasing product. Securitization. Later on, we may look into securitization. For the time being, we are looking at the definition of it. Means the issuance of securities by a special purpose vehicle. So this is not a physical vehicle, we'll talk about later, which are backed by any asset consisting of any or all the rights in a finance lease or any equipment forming the subject matter of the finance lease of both transferred or assigned by a lessor in favor of such special purpose vehicle. Okay. Right, so that's the definition. Now let's think practically so you can understand what is meant by securitization here. Suppose a company, let's say People's Leasing Company, that was incorporated as a specialized leasing company. If you remember it, what do you mean by a specialized leasing company? You can only do leasing. Okay. Now my question is very simple. Can a specialized leasing company accept deposits? Yes or no? No. Very good. Now People's Leasing Company started its business as a specialized leasing company which cannot accept deposits. Okay. Right. If a specialized leasing company cannot accept deposits, how does it fund? How does it get funds? What are the funding options? What are the funding options of a specialized leasing company? Good. Borrowings. Further. Specialized leasing company cannot accept deposits from general public. Then what are the funding options? Write your answers quickly. You have done it again and again. Okay, equity is there. What else? Quick. We have given more than 7 options. Borrowings, equity, retained earnings. What else? I need some answers. Debentures. What else? I need more. Notes. What were the notes? Commercial papers, promissory notes. Very good. Very good. Okay. Right. So if you are a specialized leasing company, you cannot accept deposits from general public. Therefore, you go for other options, funding options like commercial papers, promissory notes, debentures, bank borrowings. Okay. Right. Now, in order to borrow, you have to mortgage something. Got it? In order to obtain money from a bank, you have to hand over an asset to the bank. For a specialized leasing company, what is the asset that will start to grow? For a specialized leasing company, what is the asset that will start to grow? That is your vehicle leasing portfolio. We call it LRR, lease rentals recoverable. LRR, that is lease rentals recoverable. That is becoming your asset. Okay. Can I mortgage that asset? You are a specialized leasing company that cannot accept deposits, but you want to fund your project. Products. Initially, you put your own money and you raise some amount from commercial papers and promissory notes. Out of that money, you gave away as lease. Okay. Now you are growing an asset. That asset is lease rentals recoverable. If that is asset, can you consider that as a security? Say yes or no. Yes, very good. You are growing asset. That asset is lease rental recoverables. That's asset. Now you can mortgage that asset and give it to a bank and obtain a loan. That is securitization. Securitization means issuance of securities. Now what is the security you are offering? Vehicle registration books, CR books, or the lease rental recoverable portfolio, and you are offering it to another bank and get a loan from that. That is known as securitization. Earlier we talked about special purpose vehicle. Now it's not a vehicle that is moving. Okay. Special purpose vehicle means a body, corporate or unincorporated, including a trust established solely for the purpose of securitization and for the activities connected within or incidental thereto. Okay. It's a corporate body, maybe a trust that is looking after securitization. So now we are looking at some terms coming under leasing. We talked about lessor, lessee, then finance lease, operating lease. Now we looked into securitization and special purpose vehicle. Okay, so you can read them very carefully and get an understanding. So securitization, now you know that bundling all the mortgages or the lease rental recoverables and getting a loan against that. Supplier means a person who supplies an equipment for the purpose of a finance lease but does not include a lessee, where the lessee supplies such equipment. And okay, it's very simple. Car sales. Okay, let's say Toyota company, that is the supplier of Toyota car. Demo, the supply of Tata and Benz vehicles. Maybe your village level car sales company, that is the supply. Maybe another individual who already used the vehicle and sell it out. He is the supplier of the vehicle. So you have lessor, lessee, and the supplier. Supply agreement means an agreement entered into by a lessor with the supplier for the supply of an equipment by the supplier under finance leasing. Now, supply agreement. Supply also signs an agreement. Supply agreement by a lessor with a supplier for the supply of equipment. Okay, I'm going to give you the vehicle. Now I'm quoting an example from a book to show why these definitions are very important. Remember, we have this leasing act, and this act, okay, shows us the area, shows us the definitions, and in all possible areas how to deal with. Now I am quoting you an example from a book known as Global Leaders in Islamic Finance, page 36. Why do I quote this example is to show how important the definitions when you are entering into business. You have a lessor, who is he? You have a lessee, who is he? There is a supplier, who is he? What are the agreements? What terms and conditions you agree upon? Because all these things, when they have any problem, they turn to define them in favor to them. This is why the definitions are clearly given in the Act. Operating lease, clearly defined. There is no possibility of transferring the ownership. Finance lease, clearly defined. There is an option to transfer the ownership. Okay? Remember, even after paying 48 rental or the last rental, automatically it won't transfer. There's option to transfer. Okay? So you are not saying it's compulsory to get transferred. All these things were clearly defined. Now, I'm quoting you a different example. DIB, Dubai Islamic Bank, that was created by a good businessman in Dubai, a prominent businessman, Haj Said, who founded the world's first Islamic bank. Now, Islamic financing is an alternative to conventional banking. All what we are discussing is conventional banking, where interest is the major component of our banking. But the alternatives to conventional banking looks into other options. And Islamic finance is such. Even though there were a lot of theoretical level discussions, it was this gentleman who wanted to test the alternative banking system. So he started that bank in 1975, and he died last month, 29th June 2020, I think at the age of 93 years old. Now, this is what I caught from a book talking about the first Islamic bank. The extensive use of murabah, for the time being, let's assume that's leasing, was not without its challenges. Now you are going to establish a product without having these legal terms defined. Now here you have a leasing act, and based on that you will define everything. But here you are trying to run a business without properly defining all these terms. Okay, so there were enough challenges. In the 1980s, 3 cases some kind of printing or typing mistake by me. 3 cases were heard in Dubai courts involving sales on murabaha. Okay, so in Islamic finance, there are alternative products like mudaraba, murabaha, right, for our conventional financial products. So this is the alternative for leasing, murabaha. In one such case filed with Dubai First Instance Courts in 1984, a buyer had requested Dubai Islamic Bank to buy a car according to his description. Now, if you look at it from conventional point of view, there is the customer, lessee. There is the lessor, the bank. And now there is the supplier, the third party. Okay. Now, bank is not defining the vehicle and say, I need this vehicle. That is always said by customer. Okay. Now here the customer says, buyer means the customer. He says, buy a vehicle on behalf of me and I'll use it. That is the leasing. And the bank, lessor is Dubai Islamic Bank, will buy a vehicle and the vehicle will not defined by the bank but by the customer. So the bank will buy a vehicle according to his description. Okay. Now the bank is not forcibly putting a vehicle to the customer. Customer is buying the vehicle. The customer is saying, I want to buy micro car. I want to buy Toyota car. I want to buy Hyundai car. I want to buy Ford double cab. That's defined by the customer, not by the bank. Okay. So the bank purchased the vehicle from the supplier based on the requirements of the customer. Now what? And promised that he would buy it from the bank according to the agreement signed by the murabaha contract. Okay. After that, there is the buying option and I will buy. So the customer agreed upon these leasing terms. The bank imported the car. On behalf of the customer, bank imported the vehicle and handed it over to the customer. Now the leasing contract is complete. Okay. So leasing is tri-party here. There is a supplier. There is a bank. There is a customer. Customer make the request, I need this vehicle. And bank buy it on behalf of the customer and pay the supplier. Say in Sri Lanka, the customer want to buy Toyota brand new car and the bank will pay to the Toyota Lanka. And now the customer gets the key and start to drive. And customer has to pay in installments to the bank. Now what is happening? After driving around it in for a while, okay, customer took the vehicle and he's driving. After driving it for a while, the customer complained that the specifications of the vehicle is not as agreed upon the contract and I want to hand over the vehicle back to the bank. Can you do that? When the lease terms are not clear, this is what customers try to do. Court sided with the bank because the buyer accepted the car as it was at the time of the delivery. Now, these are the problems that will take place when you don't have clearly defined things. Dubai Islamic Bank was the very first Islamic bank and they came up with alternative financial products, and with these kind of court cases, they got to define them very clearly. So if you need good understanding on these themes, yes, you can read Global Leaders in Islamic Finance that all talk about alternative financing of Islamic finance, the challenges they had to face. But here, we want to avoid such complex cases. That's why definitions are given clearly. So for leasing, you have this act, Financing Leasing Act number 56 of 2000. Okay, sorry, we experienced a technical issue. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Yes, okay, right, thanks. Now, thanks, okay, right, good, good. Now, we were discussing about leasing, and I gave an example from a book and showed why it is important to define terms very clearly. For leasing, thousand. Now I am asking a question. When we talked about pawning, we talked about legal enactment. What is that? What is the legal ruling relevant for pawning in Sri Lanka? Tell me the year, name, number. You have to remember these things. Number, year, name related to pawning. What is the pawning related act? Number. Yeah, can someone quickly tell me? I'm looking at the chat. Number 13 of year 1942, Pawners Ordinance. You must be able to tell me the answer like that. When you are writing, you can refer to the ordinance. As per the number 13, 1942 ordinance, these are the offenses that can be done by a pawner. In the same manner, I want you to remember this act. What is the act? Financing Leasing Act, number 56 of year 2000. So we said any legal enactment passed before obtaining independence, that is ordinance. Anything after that, that's act. So for leasing, you have Finance Leasing Act number 56 of year 2000. Now we are looking at the reference. We are looking from the acts. Qualification for registration. So the question is, who can do leasing business? Okay, who can do leasing business? Now last month we came across a lot of informal leasing companies who were not registered with central bank but were doing leasing products, and the term leasing mafia was used by the media to refer them. Okay, now who can do leasing as per that? It's a licensed commercial bank, and the act is this: Banking Act number 30 of 1988, a Finance Company Act, Finance Companies Act number 78 of 1988, or the public company and with the due capital. Cancellation or suspension of registration. Failure to commence business within. Okay. Now, who is regulating specialized leasing companies? That's CBSM. Now, they are giving the license to do leasing, and they can cancel the license. I said every regulator is a tiger with teeth. They can give you the license and they can cancel or suspend the license. Now, what are the reasons behind canceling or suspending the license? Failure to commence business within 12 months after registration. Okay, you get registered, then do business. If you fail to do that within 12 months, your license will be cancelled. Ceasing to carry on the finance leasing business. Proposing to make or making any composition or arrangements with its creditors or going into liquidation, being wound up, or otherwise dissolved. Carrying on its business in a manner likely to be detrimental to the interest of its lessees. Inability to meet its obligations to its lessees, creditors, or suppliers. Acting in contravention to provisions of this act. Furnishing false, misleading, inaccurate information, or concealing or failing to disclose material facts. Okay, so the leasing product is regulated. You are given a license. Your license can be suspended or cancelled. Duties of lessor, lessee, and supplier. We said there are three parties involved. There's a lessee, there's a lessor, and the supplier. Now let's look at some nice examples. Now, leasing is very popular, and there are specialized leasing companies and finance companies competing with commercial banks who all do leasing. It's almost like pawning. In pawning, commercial banks are into pawning, finance companies are into pawning, and they are competing. In the same manner, leasing is the other most popular product, and all of them are competing in this product. Okay. Now, if I ask you a question like this, banks offer lesser interest rates when lending than finance companies. Commercial banks offer lesser interest rates in lending products, lending related products, than finance companies. Why? Tell me your answer. Why? If you go to a commercial bank, you will get a less interest rate charged for the loan, lease, than a finance company. Why? Why? Our dictum is, that's right, higher the risk, higher the reward. Our dictum is higher the risk, higher the reward. So compared to finance companies, bank accept less risk. Very good. The same can be asked compared to finance companies, microfinance companies charging very higher interest rate. The reason is same, risk. Okay. So in banking, in finance related products, microfinance charge very high interest rate because they undertake the highest risk. Finance companies charge lesser interest than finance, microfinance, but higher than commercial banks because we undertake moderate risk. Banks charge lesser interest rate for lending than finance companies because they accept less risk than finance companies. Correct. Now we'll talk some practical things. Now, once I'm referring to the era before year 2009. So this happened somewhere about year 2000. A farmer who wanted to buy a tractor came with a technician, and now he's coming from Ampara area, and he came to our office and he said, I'm going to buy a tractor and I'm going to buy it from this company, XYZ company at Gampaha, right? So one of the marketing officer associated with them and met the supplier. Supplier is selected by this farmer, and in Gampaha you can find few tractor sellers. Now this farmer has come with the technician. Technician took a hammer, a simple hammer, and started hitting on the surface of the tractor. Now the marketing officer is looking at, and the farmer is looking at. Supply is there. Now this is the inspection of the vehicle, and the technician from the village, Ampara, somewhere, a village, he knocked a place few times and said, there's a crack on the crank. Okay. And I can't recommend this vehicle. Okay. Then marketing officer said to the farmer, until you are happy with the vehicle, we are not ready to hand over the loan facility. First, you be happy with the vehicle. You have come with a technician, walk around, find any good tractor that suits you, then come to our place. After that, we'll discuss with the supplier. Means what? Supply is selected by the customer, not by the bank. The vehicle is selected by the customer, not by the bank or the finance company. Okay. Right. Now, that's number one. After that, the customer comes with selected vehicle and the selected vehicle supplier. I'm going to buy Kubota XYZ category tractor at the value of 8 million, and this is the tractor. Okay. Now, the leasing company has to look into many facts. Number one, you have to evaluate the equipment. Number two, you have to evaluate the customer. Okay. Now, in pawning, you don't want to evaluate the customer. You are only evaluating the equipment. Here, you have to evaluate the equipment. Okay. Kubota XYZ model tractor, manufactured year 1980. Okay. So it's more than 40 years. Will there be a material demand for the vehicle? Now you are looking at the vehicle. Okay. So most of the finance companies, most of the leasing companies, when they say leasing product, okay, manufactured years within this specific period, okay, manufactured within 10 years, manufactured within 7 years, these products only be leased out. So they are trying to avoid unnecessary risk. Okay. So we are looking at the lessor, lessee, and the supplier. Subject to provision of this, a lessee, that's the customer, has a right to the undistributed and peaceful possession of the equipment provided to the lessee under a finance lease, and it shall be the duty of the lessor to ensure the protection of such right. Okay. Once you take the vehicle, you have peaceful possession of it. Okay. So you can use it, you can make earning out of this tractor and do everything. Okay. The provision of subsection number 1 shall not apply where a lessee has, by reason of any act or omission of the lessee, ceased to be entitled to the right to undistributed and peaceful possession of the equipment. Right. You can peacefully use it as long as you pay. And if you don't pay, then repossession of the vehicle will take place. Use of the equipment. So we are referring to finance, leasing, and the act we are referring is Finance Leasing Act number 56 of year 2000. 56 of 2000, Finance Leasing Act. As per this act, we talked about registration. Now we are looking at duties of the lessor and lessee. As per the number 56 year 2000 Finance Lease Act section 12, it shall be the duty of lessee, the customer, to take proper care of the equipment provided under the finance lease. You must take proper care of the equipment, though you are not the owner. Use it for the purpose which it is provided. Okay. Another practical thing. Before year 2009, we were facing war, the civil war between two parties. And LTTE was very much interested in developing their boats. And there was a demand for Ashok Leyland bus engines, because they used to remove the engine and make it an essential part of their high-speed boats. The engine is Ashok Leyland bus boat engine. Okay, so there were some people who were ready to lease out a bus and pass the borders and hand it over to LTTE at the value of 500,000 per engine. So we have made compulsory, if you are getting a leasing facility for bus, down payment is 500,000. Right? So you won't make any profit by taking such a risk. Okay. What is the purpose of the bus? Use it for the purpose for which it is provided. It is provided to run on the roads as a passenger vehicle with a route permit and earn. No other purpose. Not to sell it as motor engines. Got it? Lessee, the customer, should use it for the purpose which it is provided. Now, if you don't have this kind of definitions clearly mentioned in the Act, you will end up in a lot of court cases, as I showed with Dubai Islamic Bank. First, you develop your infrastructure, lease enactments, legal enactments, then you can easily do your job. Clearly defined. Bus is leased out as a passenger vehicle to run on road with route permit. C, subject to fair wear and tear and to any modifications agreed to by the parties to the finance lease. Keep it in the condition which it was delivered to the lessee. Okay, underline that. Keep it in the condition in which it was delivered to the lessee. I hand over your vehicle, a car, yellow color. Can you make it pink color? I am the finance company. You are the user. And between you and I, there's agreement for this car, that is the lease, and you are continuously paying. While doing that, the color which you purchase the vehicle is yellow, you transfer that to pink color. Can you do that? No. Why? As per Finance Lease Act number 56 year 2000, the lessee should keep the vehicle in the condition in which it was delivered. No other changes, no modifications. Okay, now this act look into many other practical possible problems. Non-delivery, late delivery, and non-conformity of equipment. Still, we are looking at the tri-party. The example which I gave you with Dubai Islamic Bank. There is customer, there is bank, there is vehicle supplier. In this, non-delivery and late delivery and non-conformity of equipment. Where an equipment, so here it can be a vehicle, specified in a Finance Lease Act has not been delivered to, finance lease has not been delivered to a lessee at on or before the time fixed under such lease of its delivery. Okay. So I'm giving you a school van. So three parties agree: bank, customer, and XYZ vehicle sales. We three agree, and you agree the payment due date is 20th of August. Today you sign agreement. So next 20th of August, you have to pay the first rent. And we believe the schools are starting on somewhere, say 10th of August. Okay. And 20th of August, you have to make your first rental. And we believe you are running the vehicle with the school van, with the school children, and making the payment. But even on 19th of August, the supplier has not delivered you the vehicle. So without earning, you cannot pay us the due rental. Okay. Or no, before the fixed under the lease. So it has not taken place, or has been delivered after such time, or where the equipment delivered does not conform to the terms and conditions. Okay. Warranties or specifications in the supply agreement relating to such equipment. The lessee may, subject to provisions of subsections, reject the equipment and terminate such finance lease. Okay. The lessee can reject and terminate if things are not as per the agreement by the supplier. Now I'll tell you another nice example. A well-known, a well-reputed vehicle seller in Sri Lanka published a nice advertisement showing a crew cab. You know what is a crew cab? It's a lorry model where you have a cabin first, then a body next. Okay. In this crew cab, The ad clearly shows, the paper advertisement clearly shows 3 people can stay in the front seat area, driver and 2 others. So one person who is handling aquarium business purchased this vehicle, I mean under lease contract. And on his very first journey to Ampara, the crew cab was stopped by police and said, you cannot carry 3 people in the front row. Then he said, no, we can. Then the police argued, this model vehicle cannot have 3 people in the front row. Look at the seat belts. It's compulsory to have seat belts, and your vehicle number is English number, and every person who is sitting on the front row should have a seat belt. Look at the manufactured product. You don't have a seat belt for the mid one, so you cannot carry a passenger here. And he was taken to court for that. Then he called to the XYZ, that well-known, renowned company, and said, look here, this is what your advertisement says, and I got this facility because I'm in this business aquarium. I need the driver plus 2 other people, but here that's not allowed. And he returned the vehicle. That well-known company, after that incident, changed the advertisement. In its picture of the lorry, only 2 persons are sitting on the front seat. Okay, so these are the issues you may face, very practical. Reject and terminate the contract. That's what you can do. Where a lessee terminates a finance leasing under subsection, the lessee may withhold the payment under such finance lease, and further shall be entitled to recover from the lessor any money paid under the finance lease, less any reasonable sums withheld by the lessor in respect of any benefits delivered by the lessee prior to the termination, any expenses incurred by the lessor in the connection with the lease, and any loss of value of the equipment arising from a default or negligence of the lessee. Okay, very simple things can end up in court cases. This is why the reference of this act is very important. When you are in leasing business, you must know that you are governed by an act, number 56, year 2000, Finance Lease Act. If you're in pawning business, you must know that you are governed by an act, number 13 of 1942, Owners Ordinance. Act accordingly. Comply with that. You will be removing lot of possible court cases. When a customer asks questions, you must have ready-made answers by referring these acts. Then with time, you will get a very good practical experience. Okay, these issues are very important. Where an equipment specified in a finance lease delivered to a lessee within the time fixed for its delivery doesn't conform to the terms, conditions, warranties, specifications in the supply agreement related to such equipment. So we were discussing about lessee's acceptance of equipment. Article 14, where a lessee accepts the equipment provided under a finance lease, the terms and conditions of the lease shall be irrevocably thereafter, and it shall be duty of the lessee to observe all such terms and conditions, including the terms and conditions relating to payments under the lease. The moment lessee accepts, now the lease agreement takes place. Hereafter, you cannot reject it. Irrevocably, you cannot terminate it again. The only place you can terminate is before accepting. And I showed you there can be a lot of issues with the conformity of the vehicle. You can check it before buying. You can come with a technician, look at the condition, and say you are not going to accept that vehicle. But once you accept it, you are bound by all the terms and conditions, and you have to make all the relevant payments hereafter. Return of equipment. Upon the expiration, now we don't believe anything bad happened in between, but Now remember, in Sri Lanka, once again, some practical issues. People purchase vehicles, okay, on lease terms and start using it. Suppose you have on lease term with a lorry. In Sri Lanka, sand mining is subject to a lot of legal restrictions. Sometimes you can transport sand only on Thursdays. Sometimes there's a time limitation. Suppose you break the rules. The vehicle is possessed by the police along with sand. Right? Now, the leasing company has to go to courts representing the absolute ownership and try to get the vehicle because it's your vehicle. Now, if nothing of such things happen in between, the customer will continue, pay sharp on time, and everything is fine. Now, return of equipment, Article 50. Upon the expiration of the period of a finance lease, okay, so we have agreed to pay for 48 rentals, and after 4 years, yes, you have properly paid. Or it's prior termination. No, even before that, you won a lottery and you want to terminate it early settlement. The lessee shall return the equipment to the lessor in such condition as it is specified in paragraph C of section 12, unless the lessee had acquired a right to purchase the equipment or retain it for further period. Okay. Theoretically, unless you get the vehicle transferred to your name, you may hand over the vehicle to the bank. So practically, almost all vehicles leased under finance leasing prefer to get the ownership. So you get the ownership transferred. So the absolute ownership column will be transferred to you after using and paying properly. So you have to make a request for that. Where the lessee fails to return the equipment, the lessor shall have the right to recover possession of the same. If you fail to do that, the bank has the right to possess the vehicle. Termination or variation of conditions of supply agreement. A lessee shall not, the customer cannot terminate or rescind the supply agreement without the consent of the lessor. Without asking the bank, you cannot terminate the supply agreement. The rights conferred on a lessee under this act in relation to supply agreement shall not affect by any variation of a term, condition, warranty, or spec. Supply agreement. A lessor shall not enter into a supply agreement with the supplier or for the supply of an equipment under finance lease until the lessee agrees in writing with the terms, conditions, warranties, and specs in the agreement. So the bank should not enter into the supply agreement with the supplier until the customer agrees upon the terms and conditions in writing. Whereas the bank has entered into supply agreement in accordance with the provisions in the subsection 1, and the equipment specified in the agreement is delivered on or before the time fixed, the lessee shall accept the equipment supplied if the equipment conforms to the terms and conditions. Now you can start paying the rentals. Supplier's obligation. So leasing is the triparty. You have a customer, you have the bank, you have the supplier. Supplier has a duty. Supplier's obligation to lessee, to the customer. Where a lessor enters into supply agreement for the supply of an equipment to a lessee, the lessee shall also have the right to enforce such agreement as if the lessee were a party to it, correct? Where the supplier discharges the liability under supply agreement to either the lessor or the lessee, the supplier shall be released from the liability. The moment the supplier discharge or hand over the vehicle, he is no more required to do any other activity. Shall not be construed as imposing the supplier any liability to both the lessor and the lessee. So if you have done your part correctly, you have nothing else to do. Non-liability of lessor for loss in relation to equipment. Lessor. Who is lessor? The bank. A lessor shall not incur any liability to the lessee for any loss suffered by the lessee in respect of the equipment provided under finance lease, except to the extent of any loss arising out of the lessee's reliance on the lessor's skill and judgment on the selecting of the equipment or in the lessor's intervention in the selection. Okay. So lessor shall not incur any liability. The bank should not incur any liability under the Leasing Act. There are exceptions given if the bank is undertaking to inspect and look after the vehicle on behalf of the customer. Subject to the provision of subsection, the lessor shall not, in the capacity of a lessor, be liable to any person for any loss suffered by death, personal injury, or damage to property caused by any equipment provided under the finance lease or its use. Okay. Now we are looking at all possible legal issues. We have hired out, okay, the bank, has given a vehicle under leasing. That vehicle caused a property damage or death, but the bank is not liable for that. Shall not affect the liability of lessor for the loss referred to in that subsection capacity other than as a lessor. So you are not the user. So you are not held liable for the damages caused by the user or the customer or the lessee. Now the default by the lessee. Okay. Now, since we are talking so much with the Act, we'll discuss some other things practically, then refer back to the Act. Okay. Now, once a customer comes to the finance company and customer says, I want to lease out a forklift. Do you know what is a forklift? Yeah. Customer want to lease out a forklift. We have seen in container yards, there's a simple vehicle that has a fork arm that will lift certain boxes. That is forklift. Okay. Now this person comes to the finance company and say, I want to lease out a forklift. Okay. Now you are the marketing officer of the finance company. Tell me, leasing out a forklift, is it riskier than other commercial vehicles? Now, at the beginning, we said finance companies prefer vehicles than equipments. Now, I'm coming with a vehicle. Right now, you said vehicles are very popular and vehicles easy to lease out. Here, the customer wants a vehicle, a forklift. Right? It's not a machine. But do you feel it less riskier than a machine? Or do you prefer this forklift than other commercial vehicle? What do you feel? Write something in the chat box. It's less riskier than machines. Okay, correct. Is it riskier than other commercial vehicles? Is it riskier than other commercial vehicles? Okay, so you have mixed reaction. More riskier than other commercial vehicles? Yes, same, okay. Anyway, now you know the seizures are there. How do they seize? Okay, is it easier to repossess and sell it? Now think about that fact. When you comparing with other vehicles, forklift, is it easier to repossess and sell in second-hand market? Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy. Right. Now a customer comes to a finance company and says, I want to lease out a forklift. Remember, that's a rare occasion. Not all customers. Very rarely a customer would come and say, I need to lease out a forklift. Now the marketing office is very interesting. Okay, fine. Now you have to evaluate two things. What are they? Machine customer. Character, machine. Okay. In pawning, only the item. Here, item and the character. Now he asks, okay, what is your nature of business? Now this guy says, customer says, I am a junk collector. I collect old newspapers, used newspapers, bottles, and metal items, and sell it back to the wholesale. One day, one of my friend sold me an old forklift to the metal value. I purchased it for the metal value, but instead of reselling at a higher price for the metal value, I thought of repairing it, and I found a very good technician. I repaired it, and I'm living in Jala area, and I found a lot of container yards, and I rented out it. It gave me a good income, a constant cash flow, and I'm not involved in it. That's a passive income, and I'm very happy with that. So I purchased few other forklift non-working things, used a technique, got the technical support, converted them into working condition, and in few vehicle yards, my forklifts are on hiring terms. Now there is a container yard who need at a stretch to lift 12 feet, and my machines are not in the capacity to do that. I want to lease out brand new Japanese forklift machine. This is why I came to you. Okay. Now he told his story. Okay. And he's not having any other asset other than forklifts. He has other source of income. Will you give him this facility? Let's say the facility is 3 million. Are you ready to give him this facility? No. I want some other answers. Are you willing to give him 3 million to buy this new forklift? I'm taking you to a practical situation instead of directly discussing only on the lease act. Are you willing to give him 3 million to buy this new forklift? I got only one answer so far. No. Others. Are we keep anything else as a collateral? No. Jude? No. No other collateral. Disney? No. Correct. Oh, I'm saying, okay, that's your view. Jude, what is your answer now? No. Okay, right. No conventional banker will give him this facility. Correct. But we said leasing companies undertake slightly higher risk than banks. Okay. Now the marketing officer said, okay, fine, I'll visit you. I have arranged some other visiting in order, and I'll visit you following Monday. He visited this guy. And now you go to his house. You look at physical things. Okay, he's living in a very small house. And you look at other physical things. Okay, he's having a TV, a set of chairs. Okay, fridge is there. Then you start discussing. Okay, you said you already have hired out how many forklifts? Okay, 5 forklifts. Fine, right. Where are they now? They're in these yards. Do you have a list of the places? Yes, sir. This is now he comes with a piece of paper. Okay, fine. Now, do you record the earnings of these forklifts? Yes, sir. He comes with the exercise book, and he has noted down, let's say, number 41 yard, 1 week, 3,000. Number 32 yard, the same week, 40,000. Okay, so here's keeping records. Right. Can I visit with you one of these yards? Okay, sir, we'll visit. Now you go and visit a yard. Okay, that machine is working. So you ask the supervisor, do you know who is owning this machine? Yes, sir, this machine is owned by the person who came with you. Other 2 machines belong to Mudalali. Okay, fine. Right. Now what is your stand? Are you rejecting this 3 million, or are you going to give this 3 million? Still rejecting. Okay, conventional banking. Good. That's how the bankers think. But the marketing officer now asks what Jude was interesting. Right? He know this person is not having any other collateral, but something very valuable is there. Remember, a bank has enough customers, so the bank want to filter. Finance, leasing, a leasing company will not get that much of customer base. So you are interested in giving facility as long as you can undertake a calculated risk. What Jude asked, collateral, is not there. But there is very important thing. Okay, can you give me a contract or a kind of agreement with the person who is going to take this forklift from you? Yes, sir. Piyadas Mudali will definitely give me that. Can we visit Piyadas Mudali? Okay, yes. But can you give him a letter saying, I'll pay you this much for this much of years on monthly this term? And Piyadas Mudali is garment, owning a garment. He's having a nice yard and he's giving this letter. And the marketing officer recommended the facility which the head officer approved, and the customer properly paid without any default. Okay. So this is the slightly higher calculated risk the finance company is undertaking. I agree with your no's because that no come with conventional banking thinking. But finance companies move slightly ahead. They undertake slightly higher risk. Now that is the risk they undertake. Microfinance further moves out. Right. Now I'll talk another nice practical example. Okay. The same marketing officer got a reference. References are also very important from a higher ranked employee of the same finance company and said, marketing officer, can you check the possibility of giving this person 3 cars under leasing facility? He's personally known to me. He's running a good car sale and rent a car company at Burlesque. Okay. Now the marketing officer went through the application. Okay. Now the application shows all positive things. He visited this car sale and rent a car company situated in Burlesque, a good, highly densely populated area. Okay, good demand, Western province. And when you visit this place, unlike the Botal Patrakara place, a nice business area. Okay. 20 vehicles, cars and vans, nicely parked in good condition. And he went into the office in the upper story, and 3 girls were working. One may be accountant, one may be the reception. Okay, and inside in the air-conditioned room, you meet the customer, possible lessee. Okay, so when you meet the customer, he's in good shape, right? Superb Mudalali, right? So in business world, we find people cover up all the body parts which is not covered by clothes by gold. So the Mudalali is same, all the fingers covered by gold, wearing a huge golden chain, right? So you look at them, right, showing wealth. Okay, handshake, and after that, okay, after proper introduction, right. So I came to visit you because you have asked 3 cars from us. Okay, right. So yeah, I told this XYZ of your company in this rank. Yes, sir, he referred me, and this is why I came to you. So I think you are running a very good business, and we do not hesitate to give you 3 additional vehicles. Just for, if I'm not inquisitive, can I know whether you own all the 20 vehicles parked here? No, some of them I own, some of them on lease terms, and some of them belongs to my friend. Very vague answer. Okay, sir, fine. Now you said you have leased out certain vehicles. So you are a very good businessman. So when you are evaluating business people, we want to see past 6 months, current account statements, this, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not having a current account. Okay, sir, fine. Now you said you have leased out certain vehicles. Can I see the last invoices, last receipts of these lease payments? Okay, I'm not a constant proper payer. There were defaults. Okay, fine, sir. Default is not a big issue as long as you continue paying. I know in a business there may be ups and downs in the cash flow, but as long as you are committed to pay, we don't mind. Can I see some of these receipts? Sure. And he showed them some receipts of another finance company. Then he looked at them and said, sir, you have made all the payments through current account. See the checks. You have paid all of them by checks. Now the customer says, I closed all these current accounts and I'm not having any current account. Okay. Right. Now what is your stance? Will you offer him this leasing facility of 3 million each car or reject it? He's not Botal Patrakara, he's having accountant. Okay, he's having accountant, good, nice place in Borleskamur, the town, and he's having 20 vehicles, which is giving him cash. Right, okay. No, background seems uncertain. Repayment doubtful. Okay, good, good. What else? Others? What else? Others? Will you recommend to give him this facility or not? Can we verify another steady income? Okay, that's a good question. No, this is the only business I'm running, and I have a lot of business opportunity, wedding cars, good income. Right, I have few nice white colored cars. Then vans for trips, good income during vacation. Okay. So I don't have any other income. Now what? Okay, so the marketing person rejected this facility, citing what you said, repayment doubtful. Okay, and he had a very valid question. If he has been a good customer of a competing finance company, why can't he get another 3 facilities from them? Okay, why is he trying to get into us? Okay, though we are in competing business, though we need to get into others' business areas, we must grab quality business, not the numbers. So he rejected the facility. Okay, now let's get back. Okay, there are so many such nice examples. Now, once again, we'll get into the act default by lessee. Where a lessee fails to comply with certain terms and conditions of the finance lease, in such circumstances, subject to section 21, require the lessee to make accelerate payment. Okay, please pay us, you have failed. Where lessee fails to make accelerated payments, terminate. Terminating is the first step to repossess. Recover such damages in place lessor in possession of the lessor would have been the lessee and compiled. Okay. Accelerated payment or termination with notice to lessee. A lessor shall, prior to enforcing the right to accelerated payment or to terminate, must post these things, specifying the circumstances which had caused a substantial failure of the lease within the meaning of the finance lease. Okay, now what is happening? Appoint a date not being a date less than 7 days after receipt of this notice for remedifying the failure to refer to it in paragraph. Okay, theoretically, you cannot repossess a vehicle which is having a valid lease contract. So you terminate it first. And when you are terminating, you have to inform prior to 7 days. Where a lease fails to remedy failure specified in notice served under subsection on or before date appointed in the notice or fails to give a reasonable cause, may act in accordance with the provision of section 20. Now we are acting with the section 20. Okay. A finance lease may provide for the manner in which damages recovered. So there may be damages. Now how we are going to recover. Due diligence of the lessor. A lessor shall not entitle to recover under such transfer of assignment of lessor's right. A lessor may with the, okay. Now we are looking into other important areas. We always find lot of different issues coming within the agreed time. Sometimes customers want to early settlement. Moratoriums. Now we all know what is moratorium. Okay. Sometimes some customers want to transfer the facility to another person. So he will continue paying the same rentals, but finally please transfer the vehicle to him. So many other in-between arrangements trying to take place. So what are we trying to do? Transfer assignment of lessor's rights. A lessor, that's the bank, may with the written consent of the lessee obtained at the time of entering into the finance lease, or thereafter transfer or assign all any of the lessor's right under the finance lease to any equipment under the lease of both to any registered establishment or special purpose vehicle. That's on securitization. Provided that in the case of transfer or assignment of a special purpose vehicle, such transfer or assignment shall be made only for the purpose of securitization. Here's problem with spellings. Securitization, and the structure for the securitization shall be approved by the central bank. Okay. Only for the purpose of securitization. Now we are looking at the lessor. Lessor, the bank, can the bank transfer the ownership to someone else? Now the customer is asking from time to time, can I transfer the ownership to someone else and he will be paying? Now the bank, while having the ownership of your absolute ownership of your vehicle, can they get it transferred? Only under securitization, no other way. And that securitization arrangement should be approved by CBSL. A registered establishment or special purpose vehicle shall effect securitization only for accordance with the structure approved by the CBSL. A transfer assignment under the finance lease alter the nature of legal effect insofar they relate to any equipment provided. Okay. Right. So the bank can get securitized the facility. Lease, rental, recoverables in future can be considered an asset, compile it, and take further loan from another bank. So that is securitization. That can take place. Upon a transfer of assignment, okay, now we are looking at special purpose vehicle. So it is not a physical vehicle. It is an organization to look into securitization. Upon a transfer of assignment by the lessor as provided for subsection 1 to special purpose vehicle of his right in a motor vehicle within the meaning of Motor Traffic Act. Okay. So within the Motor Traffic Act, we can consider special purpose vehicle. Okay. Now special purpose vehicle, what is that? SPV. That look into an organization or establishment will take hold of asset, that is lease, rental, recoverable, and securitize them. The transfer or the assignee shall, notwithstanding anything in the contract of Motor Traffic Act, be deemed to be absolute owner of the vehicle, and transfer the assignee shall within 7 days after transfer of assignment, as in the case, apply to commissioner to have the name of the transferee or assigned entered as the absolute owner of the vehicle. The appropriate register maintained in such form as may be provided by the commissioner. Okay, so hereafter the absolute ownership will be with the bank which offer them the loan. The application shall be accompanied by the fee. Okay, so it's all on this special purpose vehicle of assigning securitization. Okay, now don't be afraid. For exam purpose, you will not be asked that much of detail, but you must know what is securitization. Okay, right. For exam purpose, you need not to worry on too many details covering up in the act, but you must know the differences between operating lease and finance lease. Okay, so what are the differences? Then what is the relevant act for leasing industry? Who can do leasing? Practically, we have seen in last week's informal leasing companies. Okay, then we want that. Then why it is important to govern this leasing product by an act? So there are ample of examples. Okay, so we'll meet next week and further discuss on leasing. After that, we'll move into directions given by CBSL on NBFI sector. Okay, thank you.